Okay, so this is a little tutorial on how to work through the lab, number one, and how to use Google Earth. And so I talked to you a little bit about Google Earth in that kind of intro video I did for the entire class. But here we'll get into the kind of gory details, and there's some links around for you to go to help you learn how to navigate in Google Earth. And so it's kind of like Google Maps if you've used that, of course, but it's, we use it in a larger scale so we can look at some things, in kind of this big picture view. So what you'll first want to do is download Google Earth, and there's a couple ways you can do that or places I have in the course. But certainly when you come to I guess I'll jump out real fast just so you can see, you go to your modules, remember, and you come down here to the introduction to the course. This is the lab. And then it's going to tell you here you need to download Google Earth. So it should be as simple as going here and going, oh, look, there it says download Earth Pro on desktop. Now look, there are other versions that exist. We don't want anything but this. There's a web version, there's an app. Those won't work. You'll need this Pro version. It is free, so you just need to download it and install it. And then we can go ahead and work through the lab. So this lab in particular has a couple aspects to it. The first part is to kind of introduce you to a little bit of math. So I know a lot of times math is not people's favorite thing to do. So there isn't a ton of math in this class. But look, we are calculating things, sometimes the speed of how things move, maybe a landslide or a flood waters or things like that, or a volume, how much water is available, how big was the landslide. And so, some shapes and sizes, some volumes and areas, that's kind of the speed for what we want you to do. And so what we do here is I'm going to preview this lab with you and walk through some of it with you. And so it's here asking you some questions. Can you plug some variables in and use your calculator to figure out a value and then understand the units associated with it? So the first part is math. Like this is a volume question, right? Length times width times height. We're just kind of figuring that out, right? And then what are the units with that? And then here is, what we call a discharge, is how much water is moving through. We talk about floods. You're going to take some information and plug it into this equation and get a value out. And then, of course, units are important. And so you're going to work through a couple of these just to get an idea of the math here. And like I said, it's anything beyond multiplication, division, things like that. But it's looking at a formula and not being terrified by the fact that it's a formula and just plugging the values that are given to you into the formula, performing the math, and getting the answer. Okay, so that's kind of the first part of the lab. So that's the first 10 questions. After that, we want you to get used to using Google Earth Pro. And so the way I'm going to have you do that is you're going to download this file here. Okay, and so you should be able to click on it. Now, depending on your browser, it will download into your browser or your download files. And then if you have Google Earth up, if you open it, it should open within Google Earth. Otherwise, you can go find it, double click it, it should open in Google Earth. If not, of course, you can, here's what Google Earth looks like when it's open. You can go to File and go to Open, find it, and it should open that way. And so what you see here is Google Earth. It allows me to navigate around and do kind of cool stuff. And so some of the tools available to you, one nice one is this little N here. If I click it, it'll take me so that I'm kind of organized here. Holy crap, I'm upside down. So let's do that. There we go. There's the good old US of A. And so here we can manipulate. I'm using my mouse and the left click button. When I hold it down, it allows me to move it around like this. And then I can use my scroll bar because I have or scroll wheel because I have one, and I can scroll in and out. Now you can also use these here. So zoom in, zoom out. And then you can rotate left and right. You can move up and down. So you can use those tools there to navigate around Google Earth. So you can zoom in and, you can get some pretty interesting features that we can see. And so we want to be able to do that, make observations. Now, there's a few other things that are important about Google Earth, of course. One is you could see the longitude and latitude are given here for wherever my cursor is. So I could ask you a question about what's the longitude, latitude at a certain point. You would just leave your cursor there, go down to the bottom right, and read that off. It also gives me an elevation, which is kind of nice, about how high I am off the elevation of the land surface, I'm sorry. So that's this number here, elevation. Your eye elevation is how high you are off the ground. Now, be aware, there's a bunch of tools over here on the left. This thing that's terrain, that's checked for me, you need to have that checked or the elevation doesn't work. So right now it's unchecked, and you can see elevation just says 0. That doesn't help us, so make sure we check that. Now it tells me that, right here at this point, that's 4,096 feet above sea level. Right, so that's useful for us, so we can use that tool. So that's helpful. We can use the longitude, latitude for that. There's some other tools up here. This little icon is what's called a place mark. So you can click that and then you can place a pin somewhere and name it something and save it. So that's useful to us. The other tool is probably the most useful is this measuring tool. It's a ruler tool. If I click on it, it'll bring up this pop-up window and it'll allow me to measure something by drawing a line. And so I can put my little bullseye somewhere on Green River, click, and then drag and click again. And it tells me that that distance is 45.8 miles. I could change it to feet. I could change it to inches, kilometers. So when you're asked a question, make sure you're using the right units. Sometimes that's a reason that you got something wrong. And then you can clear it, and then you could say goodbye. So really, it's the pin, this ruler. This tool here is useful. So the other tool we might use is a historical. If you come up here, because Google has collected imagery over the years, we can go back in time. And so for us, that can be useful for, let's say, earthquake or flood damage. We want to go back in time and look like, what did it look like before the earthquake? What did it look like afterward? So you can see we're up to 2020, but I can go back here and there's an image from 2003. Now it depends on where you are and how close you zoom in as to how many images they have and the quality. So here as we zoom in, we see there's not as many images. And so the quality ranges, of course, as we get newer and newer, it gets better. And then of course we can get rid of that and get the most recent image there. Okay, so we want to be able to navigate around. This is what we're going to do in Google Earth, and we're going to make some observations about what we see. Now, we did import this file here called GLG110IN Lab number 1. When you have things in here, you're going to have these little carets here. So we want to expand our file because there's more information there. And you can see that it opened up these other pieces of information. And we want to use those to answer the questions in the lab. The other thing I want to point out is there is a search bar here. So if you're looking for a place, you can type it in there and hit search and it should take you there. For the most part, I've done that for you. These are what are called place marks, these little pin drops, but I've put them there so you can just click and go to those locations, right? So I'm going to pull this out for a minute and come back to our questions. Here it's asking you how many place marks are in the folder. Only count the ones that have a blue link. And so I come over here and these are our place marks, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we can count those and we can answer that question. And then I'm going to come back to my questions again. And so it's asking you to visit certain places like the McCully Sinks and then answer a question about it, or go to SP Crater and measure the length, or go to Conchita Landslide and look at some imagery there, okay? And so let's go do that. We come over here and we say, oh, it wanted me to go to McCully Sinks, right? If I double click, it'll actually take me there. So I'm not doing anything after I double clicked. It's just driving me there on its own. And so it's also given me this pop-up here with some information that I can read. It'll tell me something about it, and something about it might be in the question that I'm asked, right? And so we can just read that to answer. We could also visit a link with more information, or we can get rid of this because I just want to see what's going on here. So I could zoom in. I could ask you how many little sinkholes do you have? You count them, answer that question. These are the kind of things you would get for the lab here is you're going to navigate around and make observations. Same thing, SP crater. I want to go there. I double click and I don't do anything. It's just moving on its own. There's some information that's provided for me here that I can read before I do anything else and see if that's something I need to answer in the question, or I can go and get more information by clicking this, or I can get rid of it because one of the questions wants to know what's the distance across my volcano here, my little cinder cone. So it wants me to measure. So as an example, I'm going to move over here. We could see, oh, we went to La Conchita. So SP crater. So I want to know, what's the width of the base? And I want you to go from the 2 dots that I put there, and I want it in feet. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to get my ruler tool. I'm going to say I need this in feet. And then I get my little crosshairs and I want to go click, and I want to come across and go click. And it's telling me that's how many feet it is. And then I can go back to my question. And you always want to pick the one that's closest. So obviously I got 4,076 feet. These are so far off. It's got to be this one, right? So you click that answer and you move on. Okay. And so this is how this lab is going to work. It's just asking you to explore some of the features and things that can be done in Google Earth. So you're learning to navigate around. I'm going to get rid of this pop-up, bring this guy back. And so I can zoom in and zoom out as I want to do things here, right? And so these check marks say that they're active so they can see them. I can zoom way out and see other things. But if I want to navigate to these, I want to go to the landslide. I double click, information there. Now, if you have multiple windows, that's awesome. Otherwise, you're doing a lot of tabbing, which I get can be a little annoying. But here you can see that this history popped up here. So I might ask you to go to different time periods, information you can read. I've even given you a kind of a drawing of the slide material. You can see it kind of came down and took out these homes that used to be here. Now, you could see that I could get rid of some things here by clicking them on and off, right? I could open up this. I could get rid of the A and B, right? So they're active or inactive by checking and unchecking. So if I wanted to know the elevation at point A, right, because I have terrain on, we talked about that earlier. Let me sneak this up a little so you can see the elevation there. And I can you want to get a little closer so you get a better idea. But here's A, you want to put your cursor there. Oh, it's about 581 feet, right? And then you'll want to go to here and pick the one that's the closest to that. So somewhere I ask you, maybe it's, I don't know, remember if it's the distance between the two or whatever. So estimate the elevation difference. Oh, so find A, find B, and subtract. Okay, you can do that. Looking at different places and seeing things on the ground and putting those off. So you're going to basically walk through the questions. It's going to tell you to go to a certain place mark. You're going to go there. And then you're going to do what it asks you to do, right? So I'm going to come back to my La Conchita landslide. There it is. Okay, I can use my thing here, my little north-south. I'm zooming around so I can get a better picture of it. I can look at this road here. I can go back in time. All right, I'm going to scoot this thing back here. Oh, look, the road is gone. So potentially there was a landslide that wiped out the road, and then the road was repaired and it came back, and then there it is back. And so you could go back and look at the dates and make some estimates on when the landslide occurred. And there's a question about that, right? So that's how you would use the kind of go back in time stuff. And then, of course, when you're done, you want to get rid of it. So you're always looking at the most recent image. Okay? And so obviously, Google Earth can do a ton more stuff. We're just using the basics. What we're going to do for a lot of the labs is going to have you import information here with places that I want you to visit. You're going to go there and you're going to evaluate what's happening there, right? When was the earthquake? or how much damage was done, or what area was flooded, or how tall are these things, or how far away are these things, right? This is how you're going to kind of do an active lab online by using this tool, okay? And so if you know how to zoom in and zoom out, you know how to kind of rotate around, right? You know how to use the place marks to take you to locations that I want you to go to instead of typing them in here. I want you to go here because that's the exact spot that I want you to look. And then once you get there, you can zoom in a little and zoom out a little. Okay, there's some pop-ups with some information. There's some links with some information. There's a measuring tool and there's a history tool. For now, those are really the only ones we need. I might occasionally ask you to take a snapshot or a screenshot of what you see here and submit it, and you can all, I'm sure, do that. But there is an icon up here, I think, for taking a picture. There's a save image. You can do that. Okay, and so that's the basics of Google Earth. And of course, there's some tutorials that you can go through that I've linked in the explanation prior to this. And then the rest of the way, you're just going to kind of go through and do, like, here's a thing it wants you to do, and open up some stuff and find some more things and do that. And you're just going to click through. And like I said, for the labs, when you're done, you're going to hit submit. And then if you'll get a score, and then, oops, it's not working the way I wanted it to, but that's okay. I'll sneak this down a little. And so you'd hit submit, and then you'll get a score. So let me see if I can do that. Did I answer anything? Let me click something. And so I answer some stuff, and I hit submit. I'm like, yeah, I left some stuff blank. I think it tells me how long it took me. Because I'm in instructor mode, I don't think it gives me, but it'll show me, okay, I got that wrong. It'll tell me what I got wrong. So you can go back and see what you got wrong, and then you can go back and retake the quiz, right? So here, because I'm in instructor mode, it's saying I want to edit it or things like that. But when you're in student mode, it'll just say, would you like to retake it? And you're like, heck yeah, I want to take it again and do better. Okay, so that's kind of how the labs will work in general. So the labs will all be kind of set up in a similar fashion where there's questions that you answer, you click them. All of them are set up so they're auto-graded. So once you're done, you hit submit, you get a score, you can repeat if you want. If you get stuck, you'll want to reach out to me, ask me a question, I will respond to you, then you can complete it. Once you feel good that, in this case, that you understand how to use some Google Earth stuff, the quiz will actually ask you to use Google Earth and answer some questions. So you need to understand what you did in the lab so you can do well on the quiz. Remember, the quiz is timed and you can only take that one once. Okay? And then hopefully as we use Google Earth more and more, you'll get a better feel for how that works. But once again, we're not going to get super complicated into all the features of Google Earth. Just the idea that we can figure out certain elevations of places, we can measure distances, we can use place marks to take us places and things like that. Okay? So hopefully that is useful for you to get through this first lab here. And if you have any questions, of course, as you're working through any of the assignments, but in particular our lab this week, please feel free to contact me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right, have fun. Good luck.